Well, and if you're needing help in your marriage, you have come to the right place. Our guests today are the founders of a unique mentorship program, which I love that.
Yes.
Michael and Shannon Virtue bring their own personal experience and faith to help couples heal from addiction and rebuild their marriages with God in the center. Well, welcome, Mike and Shannon, to 700 Club Canada.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, now your addictive marriage material is helping marriages recover where there's been an addiction and a betrayal. So, Michael, maybe take us back, if you're okay with that, to tell us a little bit about your story and what were the few things that defined your life as an addict?
Sure. Well, it accumulated when I was younger. I suffered child abuse. I had multiple concussions. I had multiple family members die. My parents divorced due to infidelity. I had a stepfather who hung himself when I was 15, who I was very close with. So that was very tragic in our house. When I was 19, I was stabbed 3 times, and one of the wounds punctured my lung and just missed my heart by 2 millimeters. I had a best friend who, among other friends, who also died alone due to addiction. But the feelings that defined me the most, I guess, were total isolation from society, just always feeling depressed and feeling anxiety. It's being a total failure of being a father, failure of being a husband, a failure at basically everything that matters.
Yeah.
It's when my whole... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, it's a lot of trauma. And I think one of the ways the enemy loves to isolate us and hurt us is by doing that, by separating us from those who could care for us. And so you felt that way. You felt isolated and alone.
Oh, for sure. Most definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was basically, I hit my rock bottom about 7 years ago when I was on the verge of losing everything. I had lost 20 pounds. I was living out of a car. I had, the car had no battery, no gas. The windows were left down. It was minus 30. It was snowing. There was no hope for our relationship. There was no hope for anything that we had built. It got to a point where it was, let's just save Mike's life. So there was nothing left except to go to a treatment center, a long-term faith-based treatment center, with totally hopeless and totally depressed. So,
Wow. Thank you for sharing that,
Yeah.
Mike. You know, for many, they can't even articulate their story, but it's so helpful that you're able to look back and not only see the healing, but see what you've been healed from. Shannon, what was your experience as the sober spouse of an addict? What were your sort of go-to responses in that really difficult time?
Well, being the sober spouse, you experience your life partner's addiction sober. If they're making a mess, you're the one cleaning it up or trying to hold it together. You're also the one taking responsibility. So many might treat you like you're the reason why they're drinking. I had lost time, hope, trust, intimacy, security, and just the freedom to be me and to live life, the freedom to have goals and make them happen, to have dreams of us being a family. Um, you fear being stereotyped, so you'd rather cover up their addiction or their relapse. You isolate, which is what the enemy wants. You feel resentment when you realize that you can't fix them, right? You can't fix them. But the thing is, the deeper that their addiction spirals, the deeper that you will probably go into a depression. And so that's really difficult. But we need to understand that addiction is progressive and there are different seasons. For example, how chronic is their use? What are they using? How long have they been using? And how greatly has it impacted the relationship? So there's different go-tos according to season. One might be detox for 3 days, where they go to detox safely. But the sober spouse needs to detox from the addiction too. Now,
Right.
I really...
Yeah, no,
I
I was
really...
just sorry to interrupt you there. I was just going to say, yeah, like you're right. I think we often think of the one who's in the battle on the one side, and we forget that actually in a relationship, there are two people battling. So I know there's people watching right now. Maybe it's a parent-child relationship. Maybe it is a spouse relationship, or a friend relationship, someone you deeply care about, and you get completely isolated and cut off. And so, Mike, my next question is for you. So you recognize you're completely isolated. You've made choices in your life and you find yourself really in a desperate situation. So what was it that triggered for you that said, wait a minute, no, this isn't what I want? And what drew you back to community? Because even in rehab, right, that's a community experience. You need to you need to reconnect with God, you need to reconnect with others. And so what was that process like for you? How did you move from being completely isolated and alone to engaging again?
Yeah, well, I realized definitely that was going to be a long road. I mean, I tried multiple different options, whether it's inpatient and outpatient treatment centers, hospital detoxes, different programs. But I came to understand that I was not alone and that we all suffered with sin. Um, there was no hope left. Everything was in ruin. And I was quite frankly, I was exhausted just thinking about what needed to be done to restore my family and have that stable family life again. But since we serve a mighty God, and we kept Jesus at the core, I learned to love again, learn to trust again, learn to be a father and a husband again. Mm-hmm. I did whatever it took. I knew the pain that I caused them, so I was willing to do whatever it took to make sure that they never felt that again. Like right now, like I'm full of gratitude for my past, the good and the bad, because it's built someone who I love today, which allows me with that. I'm allowed to love my wife and love my kids deeply. Yeah.
Well, that's powerful. And I hear from both of you, I mean, just the shame that you were able to break off of your life in order to move back, towards Jesus and towards each other. Shannon, most marriages don't survive addiction and betrayal. Just very briefly now, what would you say to the sober spouse who feels like giving up?
I would say God has not given us a heart of fear. He keeps his promises and is with us in the wilderness. He'll lead us toward the promised land, whether we envision it a certain way or not. His ways are higher. If our faith is not lost in trial, it is fulfilled. And so remind yourself that it's on God's timing and not ours. I often refer to our rock bottom 7 years ago as our Abraham moment, because I said, God, even though this is not what I wanted, Mike is your son. And I said this after giving birth to our son.
So good. Well, we'll be right back. We want to continue the conversation with Mike and Shannon.